Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory Warhammer 40k video. In today's episode, I want to put forth a potentially hot question, maybe even a divisive topic. I'm going to try and ask and answer, does Games Workshop do they finally understand the Imperial Guard, the faction and the community? And so without further ado, let's fix bayonets and charge right into today's episode. Attention guardsmen, my ever salty partner in crime, Admiral Simon, has got an important announcement for you.
This September and October, I am doing a charity walk along the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. We'll be raising money for two fantastic charities, our local hospice, Halton Haven, and also the Pink Ribbon Foundation that raises funds to combat breast cancer. As I hate camping, walking, and will be shitting in a bucket for 4 days, I will be particularly salty and would value any support you can give us. Please click the link below for our Just Giving page. Thank you very much.
You heard the man, it's for a good cause, and you all know Simon from the battle reports. That's all for now. Move out, conscripts. So I suppose the first thing I should do is try and add a little bit of context. Try and express my feelings, what it's been like as a Guard player over the last 10, 20 years of basically no-lifing this faction. You see, when I first started collecting the Emperor's True Finest, things looked very different. Back in the 3rd and 4th edition Guard codexes, although, little side note, technically the 4th edition Guard codex was actually the 2nd, 3rd edition Guard codex, because it came out at the end of 3rd edition, but it was such a big step up, and it was very much a 4th edition style codex. Just a bit of trivia for you guys there. But anyway, over the course of 3rd and 4th edition, it felt like Guard had a lot of defining features, and that there was someone at Games Workshop that kind of understood how the faction was meant to be. For example, everyone else's infantry were taken in one squad. Maybe you got 10, maybe you got 20, maybe you got 30 guys, but you had one squad, and that took up one unit selection. You had the old force organization chart, you could take up to 6 troop choices, and for example with Space Marines you could take one 10-man tactical squad, and that was one troop choice. But the Guard didn't function like that. The Guard had a very unique way of building our army, and we almost had a force org chart within a force org chart. Put that in sort of 10th edition perspective, it was like we had a detachment within a detachment, and we had the platoon structure. And the platoon allowed us to take command squads and infantry squads and chimeras, and it allowed us to take heavy weapons and special weapons, and this all counted as one troop choice. And this meant that the Guard could get a lot of different elements that you would normally expect to find in other parts of the army, like heavy weapons being like a heavy support choice and all that kind of stuff. You could find a lot of stuff inside your troops section, and it really felt like the backbone of the Guard was the humble infantry platoon. And these platoons weren't just lone squads, they were made up of multiple different types of unit that had to work together to achieve victory. And that is very Guard at the end of the day, because it isn't about individuals, it's about everyone working together to hold the line. And when you are but a basic human in a galaxy of superhuman engineered warriors and aliens beyond humanity's ken, you need to work together to try and bring those things down. You need to work together to try and punch well above your weight. And things kind of peaked with 5th edition, although we lost some things like the regimental doctrines. We did get a lot of named characters and other ways that we could kind of emulate those doctrines again. And we still had the platoon structure, and we also got waves of new plastic models when we got things like the plastic manticore and stuff like that, which was awesome. And it really felt like Guard was going from strength to strength. But it was around 6th edition when things started to change, when it felt like Games Workshop suddenly stopped understanding what the faction was about, when there was no one at the helm. 6th edition Guard started off somewhat positively. We did get some new models with the Tempestus Scions and the Torx Prime and stuff like that, but it was more of a focus on the elite of the Guard rather than the troopers. And we also had a bit of an issue where all of the special characters went away, and all of the regimental doctrines. So rather than being able to make an army of your dudes and being able to really individualize the faction and specialize in a certain way of warfare, rather it was everyone is playing the same thing. And that just didn't feel right, because one of the best things about the Guard had always been that you could really customize the army. And you could really take a lot of different regiments that fought in very unique playstyles and emulate that on the tabletop. And all through 6th edition and also 7th edition, this trend continued. And even though there were some attempts from Forge World, now Specialist Design Studios, to add a bit more flavor back in with some unique Krieg rules and Legion rules, those were actually pretty short-lived. And I think the big change came with 8th edition. Now, don't get me wrong, I did quite like 8th edition in its entirety. I think it did a lot of work to save Warhammer 40k and Games Workshop. And if we hadn't had the great reset of 8th edition, then we may not be playing 40k today. It was very much touch or go there for a little bit, with the end of 7th edition being really, really bad time with all the power creep, and it was just a bad time. So this is not an 8th edition bashing video or a new GW bashing video or me saying things were better in the past or anything like that. No, nothing like that whatsoever. But despite me liking 8th edition from a big picture perspective, being selfish and looking at it from a GAR perspective, things were a little tricky. Firstly, we lost our platoon structure, and this took a huge amount of identity away from the army. We did get our regimental doctrines back with the Codex, and some of these were really cool, but there was no custom regimental doctrines. And so if you played Mordians, you were forced to play it in a very restrictive playstyle. Now, this might sound like I'm contradicting what I said before, but the issue with only having fixed regimental doctrines is it doesn't take into account the difference between a Mordian tank regiment and a Mordian infantry regiment. It doesn't take account the difference between a Talan recon regiment and a Talan infantry force. It really pigeonholed people a little bit too much. And the advantage of the old regimental doctrines is that you could pick and choose to really make your dudes and also make your army feel like your army. So you could have a very traditional Steel Legion force or something that was a little bit out there. And I know we lost the regimental doctrines in 5th edition, but you could still very much emulate these different playstyles depending on what like special characters you took. Now it was your Cadians, and you should be playing your guys as Cadians, and they should look like Cadians. If you've got Mordian models, you should probably be using those as Mordian models. And this wasn't just an attitude that was restricted to the more narrative or casual scene, but I believe there were statements put out by tournament organizers as well as by Games Workshop themselves saying if your guys are painted up as Ultramarines, they should be used as Ultramarines. If your guys are painted up as Cadians, they should be using the Cadian doctrine. And although there were a few attempts to patch this out, like with the Guard Psychic Awakening book in 8th edition, there was a great focus in that on the Scions, again, on the individual. And we did get some tank aces and the worst regimental doctrines in there, but it was quite limited. And we actually went pretty much our entire 8th edition and 9th edition with the same codex. And I feel like that is the most telling thing, the most telling factor. Over the course of 8th and 9th edition, I think the Marines got like 4 codexes, something insane. Squats came back before Guard got a 9th edition codex. Every other faction got at least 2 codexes in that time, and yet the Guard were just there trucking along with the same battered old 8th edition codex, which was really not fit for purpose. And if there's any indicator that GW were struggling to find the direction with the Guard, or they just didn't really quite get the faction, I think it's the fact that we went 5 or 6 years with the same book before we finally saw a change. But oh boy, have we seen a change. Like I said, this isn't a complaining video or me crapping on GW video or any particular edition. No, not at all. Because GW has turned this franchise around. And for the first time in a long time as a guard player. Not only am I happy, not only am I hopeful, I'm genuinely excited. Because us guard players, we've been eating good. It started off when we started hearing rumblings about the new guard codex and some of the new units that were going to be part of it. And then when that codex dropped, my God, it was beautiful. I didn't think there was going to be anything that could supersede the 5th edition guard codex as my favorite, but the 9th edition guard codex was awesome. Full list of custom regimental doctrines, multiple pages of them. You can pick and choose however you want. You had the competitive ones, you had the fluffy ones. You also had tank aces back in all of their glory. Baneblade tank commanders, things that we dream of in 10th edition now, were there and they were beautiful. And we had a list of 18 orders. From regimental orders to tank orders to commissars having a full table of their own orders. And all of the relics and enhancements and warlord traits, it was just an amazing book. And yeah, there were some things we didn't like about it. Lore-wise, you know, Yarick going away wasn't great. But at least they didn't just squat him. They actually didn't just write him off screen. They didn't just stop acknowledging his existence. They gave him a page, and you know, there's rumors he might come back, which is kind of cool. But we also got a huge range refresh. And this isn't the case for every range refresh. There's definitely been some new models that have put out recently by Games Workshop that looks kind of derpy. I don't want to poo on anything, but I think the old Death Company and old Sanguinary Guard in many ways are vastly superior to the new ones. I think Blood Angels got done a little dirty on their range refresh. But the Guard, oh my God. The new Cadians, a massive step up. Sure, they're a bit of a pain in the ass to build, but that's just the way GW does their kits these days. But the quality of the models, the dynamic feeling of those models running across the battlefield was awesome. And overall, and the kit themselves coming with finally you get all the plasma guns and all the melter guns. It was really, really well done. And the new Rogel Dawn. Oh, considering the last new vehicle we had was the goddamn Taurox, the vehicle that the Imperium looted back from the Orcs. The Rogel Dawn came out, and it's a beautiful looking tank. It's a big, chunky tank with lots of big firepower, something that Guard players are always craving. We like our tanks in the Guard. Give us more tanks and we'll have a good time. In my humble opinion, the Guard 9th edition drop was perfect. There was no one who was unhappy with it. You had a few people who were like, I'm going to stick to the old Sentinels because I preferred the old Sentinels. And I was one of those guys. But then when we got our hands on that new Sentinel in the Cadia Stands box, we were like, yeah, no, this is good. This is great. Like, we like the old ones, but the new ones actually are really, really Gucci. And so everything from the rules being powerful, but more importantly, flavorful, and the models was just great. And it felt like the first time it was good to be a Guard player. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a bump in the road with 10th edition being announced and the 9th edition Guard book going away. Now, it would be very easy for me to sit here and just lament the loss of the 9th edition codex. And it is sad that we didn't get to use it for as long. And I am still a bit annoyed that I didn't get to use those rules as much as I wanted to. But I'm not going to let that overshadow the point of this video, which is GW finally back to understanding the Guard. Because despite the fact that the 9th edition codex didn't last long, we went into 10th edition, we had our new index, and it felt good. I remember the first time seeing that index and going through it on live stream and being like, my God, they've done it. They've done it. They're adding things back in that we've been asking for years. Firstly, platoons were back. They weren't back exactly the same way they had been, but it was now possible for me to take a 20-man squad and attach a 5-man command squad to it and have that feel like a proper chunky blob of guardsmen. It wasn't 10 guardsmen versus 10 marines anymore. I was bringing 25 guys loaded up with a lot of guns. But it wasn't just the infantry. As I was going through all of the data sheets, what really jumped out at me about the guard and really sort of started making me think maybe someone is getting this over at GW was that the data sheets felt very guard-like. All of our units felt right. Take the Rogal Dawn, for example. It's a big tank. It's got a lot of guns, but most importantly, it's got a lot of armor. And it feels tough. It's not very good in combat. It's not going to take objectives anytime soon, but it's a big slab of armor that you can throw down on the battlefield, and it is amazingly uncomplicated. It just does what it says on the tin. And if we look at the Lehman Russ, it's like, okay, the Lehman Russ is a little bit less tough, but it's a lot cheaper. And you've got all these different variants. Like the Vanquisher is just going to kill tanks. The Battle Tank is just going to be good at clearing away objectives. The Kazakin feel like elite guard infantry. They feel like they can look after themselves. Scions feel like stormtroopers of old. It felt like each unit was kind of good at doing its job. And it wasn't necessarily good at doing its job because it had a whole bunch of amazingly overcomplicated rules. It felt simple yet effective. And that is the guard at the end of the day. We're not the blade of the Emperor. We're not the scalpel of the Emperor. We are the hammer of the Emperor. We are the anvil of the Emperor. We're simple tools that deliver hard punches and can take a beating back. And the 10th edition index, especially with those data sheets, I think has done a really, really good job of making guard feel like guard again. And over the course of 10th edition, it really feels like Games Workshop has kept one eye on our faction. Not a Munitorum field manual has gone past without them tweaking our points, often in the right direction. We may not like to admit it, but guard artillery probably was a bit broken and overpowered. Games Workshop kept an eye on that. But they didn't just take things away from us. They didn't just half-ass it and nerf us. They were like, okay, we're going to tone your artillery down, but we're going to give you something back in return. Here are some decent tanks. And, you know, there were a lot of complaints around the guard Born Soldier special rule about how it favored artillery. It felt like if you were moving around, you didn't get it. So Games Workshop went, okay, we've kept an eye on that. We've listened to the feedback. We understand that guard players don't just want to be pigeonholed into one playstyle. They want something that's a bit more flexible, that can accommodate multiple different playstyles with this very, very varied faction. So we're going to update Born Soldiers. Have they got 100% right? That's open for debate, but I'd say right now, the tweaks to Born Soldiers feel better than they did with what we had at the beginning of 10th edition. And Guard constantly getting some point tweaks and rules changes really feels like we're at least in GW's line of sight now. It's a big difference from when we went 5 years with almost no changes using the same book. But it's not just the rules, it's also the models. We've been eating so good on the model releases, and it feels like Games Workshop has not only been giving us a lot of releases, but also have been really getting those releases right. I know it's not strictly 40k, but the Solar Auxilia range for 30k was a really, really big hit with a lot of Guard players, not just 30k players. The style of the Solar Auxilia was really, really cool, and I know a lot of Guard players that pick those models up to use them as stormtroopers, to use them as special forces in their Guard armies, because some people just don't like that sort of baroque knightly sort of armor of the Scions, but the weird sort of semi-techno, semi-diesel punk vibe of the Solar Auxilia, that really felt a bit more 40k, it felt a bit more Guard. Likewise, the fact that we got Solar Auxilia Lehman Russes that look awesome and are totally compatible with 40k was great. And again, I've seen so many of the Solar Auxilia Medusas / Basilisks at my local gaming club. I don't think I've seen anyone run the traditional Basilisk since that thing came out. It's been awesome. But then we get to the actual 40k releases. Firstly, we had that Kazakin model for the Warhammer Plus thing, and that's one of the most iconic pieces of Guard artwork brought to life on the tabletop. And we've also had the new Scions, the Jump Pack Scions. I can't tell you how many Daka threads, Reddit posts. How many times I've seen people ask the question, oh, what do you think would be good for Scions? How should GW expand the Guard? And the first thing everyone always says is they should have jump packs. There should be jump pack Scions. There should be jetpack Guard troopers jumping all over the place. Games Workshop clearly has their finger on the button. It's clearly taken that feedback on board. It's clearly aware because they have finally, and they look really good, brought out the jump pack Scions for Kill Team. But then we get to the hot tamale, the big deal. Now that is the announcement of the new Krieg range. Now, plastic Kriegers is something that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And when we got the plastic Krieg infantry, it was a time to rejoice. But what's interesting is, for a while now, it's felt like Kriegers were really the poster boys of the Guard. Cadians have been around for a long time. People were, I don't say sick of Cadians because they are cool. I like Cadians. But maybe we'd just seen them for a little bit. Maybe we're a bit fatigued from Cadians being the poster boys so much. And for a long time, people, especially with the fall of Cadia, people were like, well, Krieg should probably be the poster boys now. I know all the Catachan players wish they were the poster boys, but until those models get updated, you're not going to be on the poster of anything. And now we've had an announcement. Another wave of Guard releases. Another. Last time before 9th edition, before the 9th edition / beginning of 10th edition, we went just with the Taurox and a plastic Valkyrie. That was it. That was like a decade of those were your new models. Occasionally there was like a Catachan character that got released, but it was basically those. And now we've had whole Cadian refresh, new tank, Attila and Rough Riders coming back. We've had a Kazakin iconic model release. We've had the new jump pack Scions, and now we're getting a full Krieg range refresh, a full release. We don't know what the details are going to be yet, but again, it's an acknowledgement that someone at Games Workshop gets the Guard. Someone's been listening to the feedback. Someone's been tapping into that. Because for the general sentiment in the Guard community has been that the Kriegers are sort of the real poster boys. They're probably the most popular regiment out there. Even though I wish Steel Legion and Mordians were the most popular, even though I know the Catachan and Cadian players are going to be spitting feathers this, I think we can all admit that really the most iconic, most popular Krieg regiment out there is the Kriegers. And GW doing a full Krieg range, releasing a whole bunch of Krieg models, not only is that going to make them a lot of money, but it shows that they are aware of that and that they get Guard and they get the general feelings in the Guard community. And who knows, maybe if we get plastic Kriegers, we might get some of the other regiments of renown in plastic as well. Now, I just want to say, I know not everything has been perfect with 10th edition and the Guard. For example, we've had a lot of stuff go to Legends. But overall, even with us having quite a lot of our models invalidated, it feels like we're going in the right direction. It feels like our faction is finally receiving some love and attention from Games Workshop, and someone there gets our faction, or at the very least, they're tapping in and listening to feedback from the community. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you think Games Workshop is getting us? Or do you think maybe it's just a flash in the pan and they'll be back to their old ways soon enough? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.